and good afternoon. My name is Juergen Steinmetz, and I'm joining you from Ala Moana Shopping Center here in Honolulu, Hawaii. With me is Dr. Peter Tarlow. He's in College Station, Texas. We have our daily global news talk with eTurbo News and livestream.travel. And as you can see here, I'm wearing my sunglasses. It's sunny here in Hawaii today. And I'm sitting in a very busy Ala Moana shopping center. I found a more quiet corner here, but it's packed. And people love to shop, I guess. How's everything in College Station, Peter?
In College Station, things are great. I was yesterday coming home from Orlando, where, and I'm hoping we'll be able to have someone come to speak also from it. I'm working with the Department of Justice on international tourism and working with police departments around the world on how we can increase tourism safety. One of the countries we're working with is Saudi Arabia. So that's really interesting because I know we're going to be having a big conference about Saudi Arabia on Monday, and there's a lot going on. Saudi Arabia is like the new Saudi Arabia. Maybe that's a good way to say it. But they're really open to the world now and trying to open to the world of tourism. And I'm proud that the United States is helping them to do that. So that's really a great thing.
Yeah, and Peter, as you mentioned, on Monday, we have an event and it's chaired by His Royal Highness, and I will not try to pronounce his name, but it is going to be an important event on our Zoom, and anyone who wants to be part of it actually can sign up. Just go to worldtourismevents.com, worldtourismevent.com. If you are a member of the World Tourism Network, it's $10 to attend. Otherwise, it's $30. And if you're not a member of WTN, you can still become a member. Just go to WTN.travel and click on join. Yeah. So yeah, we are excited, and there's going to be a lot of opportunities for those that maybe wanted to get contacts in Saudi Arabia, offer their product in Saudi Arabia, and find out how things work and how you can participate.
You know, exactly. Get to know people who are interested in the area. So I think that's really important. I'm very proud of my Saudi friends who have really, the country's taking a 180-degree turn in opening itself up to tourism. So this is a major concept. It's really helping the whole stability in the Middle East and peace, and it's very good. It's so often we have terrible things to talk about. This is something that's nice to talk about.
And of course, Saudi Arabia has to work on its image altogether. Yes. And the country is going through some changes. Hopefully they remain positive. It looks like they are, because they're investing billions, $48 billion to be exact.
And that's not a small amount of money, $48 billion. No, exactly.
No, that's really not. That's really not.
Yeah.
And
so,
well, but tell us a little bit more about your trip, because you had an exciting trip to Florida.
I did. I'm getting to work with ISITAP, which is the Center for Training from the Department of Justice, and working with police departments around the world. I got a really nice call today from Canada, and as you know, the Canadians are reopening their side of the border, and hopefully in August, the United States will be opening our side of the border. And that's really good, because Canada and the United States are close allies, and we've been cut off from each other. And to a great extent, you know, the border often runs through towns and villages on both sides of the Canadian-American border, and all of a sudden people were cut off from each other. So that's one of the positive things that's going on. The unfortunate thing, of course, is on our southern border, where COVID cases are up now 900%, and no one is checking. And so that is really a major problem. Those people are being sent around the country, and this is not helping in the fight against COVID. I did notice today that there's a lot going on in the world of COVID. The Israelis are moving away from Pfizer and moving towards Moderna, because it appears the Moderna vaccine is much more powerful against the Delta variant than the Pfizer. So that's something that is going to be looked at very carefully by medical professionals. And those people who have Pfizer may need to get a third shot. So it's not the end of the world, but it appears that if you have Moderna, you won't need the third shot. And if you have Pfizer, you might need the third shot. But of course, everything I'm saying is not 100% certain yet. It's the beginnings of trying to experiment as COVID goes through its many manifestations.
And Peter, the entire COVID situation is changing. It's quietly changing, and it's quite alarming. If you look in Los Angeles County alone today, 2,528 cases. In Germany and in many parts in Europe, COVID is on the uprise, even though vaccine percentage of people vaccinated are close to 60%. So that is even more alarming, because COVID is really just mostly, for the most part at least, attacking people that had not been vaccinated. So if you put this in proportion, we're going through the highest numbers ever in COVID in the United States and in many parts of the world, and people don't seem to care anymore.
Well, I do think there is COVID fatigue. I think that's, I was on the plane yesterday coming back from Orlando to Texas, and every seat was taken. In Orlando, you see the irony of it. On all the trains, you have to take from the terminal to the actual gates. It's like a little train that takes you, and they have please maintain social distance. And we were packed like sardines. So I don't know how you maintain a social distance when you have a train that's prepared for maybe say 40 people, and you have 140 people on the train, and in that train car. So that's a real issue. Certainly, we're seeing that many people, I think, have kind of given up. And the other thing we have to begin to think about is, what do we mean by vaccination? Are we talking about AstraZeneca? Are we talking about Johnson Johnson? Are we talking about the Chinese vaccination, the Sputnik Russian vaccination? We're talking about Moderna. We're talking about Pfizer. There are big differences between these types of vaccinations. So we have to be really careful on which type of vaccination we're talking about. Of course, all vaccinations are better than no vaccination. I understand that. And often people don't have a choice. They get what they get. But there is a real difference between these vaccinations. And some of them are much more successful, especially against the Delta variant, than others. So we'd have to really talk when we say people are vaccinated. Vaccinated, how are you vaccinated? When were you vaccinated? How long ago were you vaccinated? These are important questions we have to be asking now.
Yeah, but Peter, if you look at the trend right now, the uptrend, it's in the United States and in Europe, where Pfizer is really dominant, and hardly any, specifically here in the United States, we only have 3 vaccinations, and we have an uptick, an enormous uptick in COVID. It includes where I live in Hawaii. If you put it in proportion, we have the highest numbers ever. And we have 60% vaccinated. So that is alarming. And I don't know.
Yeah. And of course,
but people don't seem to be caring, you know?
Well, part of it's people, but part of it, I think we have to be a little bit careful. Some of the Israeli data is now saying people with Pfizer. Moderna appears to last much longer. But if people who have Pfizer, they're now saying after 6 months, your ability to fight off the disease has gone down to only 45%. Now, that's not absolutely certain yet. It's under medical debate. But if that's true, that it reduces your effectiveness in Pfizer from 95 to 45. And again, I don't know that's true, but it appears that's at least a working hypothesis. That means we're going to need a third shot for all those people. And that's also going to cause problems, because there is that issue. The other issue, of course, is the border and having a 900% increase with no one checking. And one of the things, of course, is terrible is the people working along the Mexican-Texas border. Many of them are getting sick also, because so many people are coming in across the border who are sick and have COVID and now being distributed around the country. So we're creating a whole new form of spread of disease that's taking place, and nobody's thought about that. So these are important issues.
Well, the border, of course, is one issue, Peter. I agree, but it's not only the border. I mean, it's in other countries where we don't have the same border problem.
The border problems are brand new. When you had yesterday hundreds of people crossing with COVID, that's not good. That's a real problem. And the other part of it is there's ICE, which is the Border Protection Services, has no ability to deal with issues of COVID. So there are some real issues. How long will Pfizer last? How long? What's happening with people coming into the country? Um, Around Europe, one of the issues is Europe kind of opened its borders, and now there people are talking in Europe again about possibly closing borders. So this is not done. I think that's a fair statement. We still have some levels to go, um, and we'll have to see what it is. When I was in Israel, we were one of the few tour groups that got in, and wow, you went through so many tests in order to be able to do it. And then they said they thought they would be open in August, and now they're saying September. And I wouldn't be surprised if Israel does not really open its borders until October. So I'm
Yeah,
not
and
it's true, but I'm
yeah,
saying
you know
I wouldn't be shocked.
yeah, and the problem in tourism, Peter, unfortunately, it's not only in the civilized and so-called first world like Israel, Europe, and the US. It's in
Right.
the third world where people don't have access to the vaccine. And as our president rightfully said, we're all in this together, and no one is safe until we all are safe. And that is really the point. If you look at South Africa, the vaccination rate is 1 or 2%. Even surprisingly, countries like Australia and Japan, it's
Oh, it's good.
extremely low.
Well, speaking of Japan, that's really an interesting thing because, as you know, on Friday, which is just in 2 days, we'll be seeing the beginnings and the opening of the Olympics. And it's going to be a very strange Olympics because now the Japanese are saying there'll be no spectators at all. It'll be just the athletes. Some of them have come down with COVID. The Japanese people really want the Olympic Games to be canceled. The athletes, of course, don't want the games to be canceled because they've been practicing for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And so this is going to be the Olympics to which nobody attends. Really going to be a strange event. And of course, poor Japan is going to lose millions and millions of dollars. So many people had prepared for hotels and other, normal tourist events and sideshows, and none of those are going to take place.
Yeah, Peter, and I remember the time when I was in Tokyo just about 3 or 4 years ago, and it was full speed in preparation to relaunch tourism, international arrival tourism into Japan. And said we're going to have to balance the arrival with the outgoing tourism, where Japan always has been very big in. And then the Olympics, everyone was so excited. And this was at the Japanese trade show we partnered with a few years ago. And who would have known this? It's really kind of heartbreaking if you look at this excitement turning into a nightmare.
Yeah, my heart breaks for our Japanese friends because the amount of money that they're going to lose is astronomical. The amount of problems is tremendous. And the anger of the Japanese people against the Olympic Committee is, again, extremely high. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. Tokyo's having somewhat of a state of emergency dealing with COVID. And this is not easy. This is a very, very difficult situation. And in reality, there is no one good solution. Because again, you hate to just cancel it, and athletes who have spent years of their life practicing, it all just went down the drain. So I think the Japanese probably made the best decision possible, which is let's have the games, but not have any spectators. But it's hard. It's going to, and if God forbid, if there should be a major outbreak in the Olympic Village, that's going to really turn into a fiasco.
Yeah, it is. And we've seen this at many similar occasions, even at the Europe Cup in the United Kingdom, where 60,000 people came into a stadium. We're just really tired of this virus, and we think, forget about it. Let's have fun. And that's kind of the atmosphere we have here in Hawaii, because our tourism is up tremendously. Our hotels are sold out. Shopping malls like the one I'm sitting here in Ala Moana are full. And is this a good thing? Yeah, it's a good thing in a way. People, it's for the spirit of people, but is it good? It's a good thing for health. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really tough. There's no real answer, but you can understand that after 16 months of being cooped up. People have had it. Australia, which is now more than half the country, is locked down. And a friend of mine was writing to me from Australia that you're allowed to only go 6 miles from your home or 10 kilometers. And you are only allowed out an hour and a half a day. And I think, that causes so many other problems. You're going to have higher levels of suicide. You're having issues of depression, uh, lack of sunlight, lack of vitamin D. So there's two sides to it, and there's no one solution. If you only fight COVID, how many young people have committed suicide because of isolation from school? And the school system is not able to pick up parent abuse or abused children. Many children around the world are dependent on schools for nutrition. And so closing the schools has created many problems. On the other hand, you don't want people to get sick. So I don't know. No one has the magic formula. I wish I did. But these are real issues that have to be thought through. Um, on top of that, we need to start really, people need to plan. I know we're starting to slightly reactivate tourism in Africa. And the African Tourism Board is finally sort of getting its feet again after the COVID hiatus. Europe, of course, had some terrible flooding and was totally ill prepared for those floods. And I know part of your family, well, they didn't die. They had flooded basements. And having grown up in New Jersey, I can tell you a flooded basement is no fun. And so there's lots of issues and preparation that needs to be done around the world.
Yeah, and floodings apparently now are popping up in different parts of the world. In India, I think yesterday, in China, I believe there was a major flooding. Interesting, to go back to the tape, to the issue of trade events, Corona, and so forth. I had an interesting conversation with the gentleman who is running the ITB trade show in Shanghai, China. And I talked to him 2 days ago, and he said it's really not reported in the media, but he has been in Shanghai through the entire epidemic. He's originally from Germany, but did not go back to Germany. And it said it's not a gimmick, it's not fake media. There is really no Corona in Shanghai. And if one little case pops up, millions of people are getting locked down, and there is no choice. You better behave in China because there are consequences. And they said, we really go about our normal lifestyle. All the shops, restaurants, and so forth are open. But if one thing pops up, we're going to be locked down again for a week. And this really has been the case, he thinks, in China for the last year. And he said it's probably one of the most fortunate places in the world, even a big city like Shanghai, because there really is no big Corona issue. And I found that quite surprising.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, this was a disease that started in China, but ended up infecting the entire world.
Right.
And that's a real issue. It's going to take a long time for historians to really understand everything that went on, where the media made some terrible mistakes, where governments made some terrible mistakes. And we probably won't know the full history of this for another 50 years. So it's going to be, I wish I would be alive in 100 years and I could look back and say, ha, that's where the mistakes were made. But unfortunately, in 100 years, neither you nor I will be on this planet.
Yeah, no, I mean, today the news, I think, is it in 2032 or 2036 Olympics were awarded to Brisbane, Australia.
Yeah, right.
So that's a sign of hope. So let's hope in Brisbane, at least we're going to have a really, really active Olympic season in 2032,
yeah.
and let's try to stay alive.
It's only 25 years away, more or less, and so let's hope that Brisbane gets over COVID within the next quarter century, and that
that's what I mean.
By 2036, the world is kind of back to what used to be normal. So much has to be redone. Customer service around the world is a disaster. Airline service is awful. And we really need to get back to a sense of caring, a sense of putting smiles on people's face. There's too much sadness. There's too many people who are just walking around depressed. And we need to somehow figure out a way to teach all of us that we're all in the same boat and we all need to learn to smile, just be happy. No matter what it is, we're alive. The sky is up there, it's blue, and take advantage of every wonderful day that we have.
Yeah, and happiness is definitely a measurement in the world, also in tourism. The country of Bhutan has been leading actually in the world with the introduction of their happiness index, what is fully integrated in everything they do when it comes to budget, activities, and so forth. And I know our friend Paul Rogers from Happy Planet in Australia, we just had a discussion 2 or 3 days ago with leaders in the travel and tourism world in talking about how this happiness index could be done fairly, because there are also major organizations like hotels.com, for example, is using the happiness index to rate hotels. So maybe that becomes more and more an important issue.
We do know that there's a connection between happiness and health. And people and societies that are happy tend to live longer and not get sick quite as much. So we really need to focus on becoming positive and happy versus negative and frowning. And maybe we can make frowning illegal and everyone will get an award for smiling and being happy. A real example of that is Reno, Nevada. In Reno, Nevada, I worked with the police force there, and we have the Smile Squad, just like you have the Ticket Squad or whatever. And these are police officers who walk around Reno smiling and getting tourists to smile. And you know what? It's brought down crime, and it has done a wonderful job of making people come to Reno just to meet police officers who are part of the Smile Squad. That's something we all need to do. We can bring a little bit of sunshine and smile on people's faces. I think we're making a good progress in conquering COVID.
It's also for the people who are smiling, they're going to be rewarded. So it's a win-win for everyone.
That's right. Well, I hope you're having a good smile there in Honolulu, and I will look forward to speaking with you tomorrow. Enjoy Ala Moana Shopping Center. They have good ice cream there, so go have some ice cream.
That's all I need is ice cream. I thought I settled for a coffee with no milk. Let's see that.
All right. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Okay, thank you.
And a happy evening here from Texas.
Yeah, and for everyone else, please stay tuned for news clips of the day. We'll be playing after this. And if you wanted to go back and look at any of our archives, you can do this and simply going to livestream.travel. Otherwise, I also wish you good night, aloha, and we're going to talk to Peter again tomorrow or the next day. And in the meantime, take care. Aloha.
All right. Smile.
Tourists find Phuket nightlife ends promptly at 9. Local Thailand authorities in Phuket closed risky places and suspended the activities that may transmit COVID-19 with Phuket nightlife shut down at 9. This suspension affects pubs, bars, and other entertainment venues requiring businesses to shut down at 9 p.m. Also included in the 9 o'clock closing mandate are dining in restaurants and shopping malls. Karaoke shops, boxing stadiums, cockfight fields, and bird competitions must also adhere to the closing time. Phuket Governor Narong Woonso signed the order to close these places and halt activities that could spread COVID-19. He included local shopping centers that can remain open until 9 p.m. while at the same time limiting the numbers of customers and suspending promotional activities and the services of their game machines and amusement parks. Dining in at restaurants must stop at 9 p.m. Local government officials and employees of local government organizations must not leave Phuket unless they have urgent reasons and receive approval from their superiors. The order takes effect today, July 20th, and runs through August 2nd. This government action is in response to an increase in COVID-19 cases in various areas of Phuket. What the people think? Most people in Thailand, around 61%, think the current situation with COVID-19 is not going to resolve itself until a couple of years from now, according to an opinion survey conducted by Swan Dusit Poll. The online poll had 1,702 people participate throughout Thailand. The overwhelming reason for the concern over the coronavirus, said nearly 90% of the people polled, was attributed to the rising number of infections and deaths. Other concerns cited were the slow vaccination processing and low quality of the vaccines. Most people, around 74%, said that COVID-19 is still out of control. Of the people polled, 49% had not received the vaccine yet. Pattaya gives away free food. Yesterday, July 19th, was the last day dining rooms could remain open for dine-in service altogether in Pattaya. Many restaurateurs decided to close entirely rather than try to survive on takeout and delivery orders, particularly as large food delivery platforms charge commissions as high as 45%, leaving few profits for operators. Rather than throw away their stock, some restaurants just gave away the leftover food. The owner of the Kruanakorn South Curry restaurant, Suchata Kakao, said that most of her customers prefer dine-in. She said her restaurant will close completely for 2 weeks, and she will reevaluate at that time whether to open for takeout. Suchata said, if the government is forcing restaurants to close, it should compensate owners. #rebuilding travel.
U.S. Justice corrupted. The 737 MAX victims had no chance against Boeing. How would one call if a prosecutor in a high-profile criminal case against a giant company, Boeing, joins the law firm that defended her biggest case several months after the case? What about calling it the Boeing modus operandi, or perhaps U.S. Justice denied? How would one call if a prosecutor in a high-profile criminal case against a giant company, Boeing, joins the law firm that defended her biggest case several months after the case? What about calling it the Boeing modus operandi, or perhaps U.S. Justice denied? 346 people died in 2019 in 2 Boeing 737 MAX crashes flying on Ethiopian Airlines in Ethiopia and earlier on a Lion Air flight in Indonesia. A criminal trial against Boeing was settled earlier this year with a deferred prosecution agreement, and it shows now why. Boeing is a Seattle-based aircraft manufacturing company with a corporate headquarters in Chicago, Illinois. Why would a criminal complaint against Boeing adjudicate in Fort Worth, Texas? Boeing defense law firm Kirkland & Ellis made a sweet deal with the leading U.S. prosecutor, Erin Neely Cox. Months after this, Erin Neely Cox quit her prominent government job and joined Kirkland & Ellis, raising suspicion of a cooked prosecution. The criminal Boeing case was meant to bring justice to the 346 families of those that died in the Ethiopian Airlines and Lion Air crashes. The result of this Texas trial was that no senior Boeing executive was charged. A report published today in the Corporate Crime Reporter revealed the details of this arrangement, pointing out that the lead attorney prosecuting the case for the U.S. Justice Department, former U.S. Attorney Erin Neely Cox, joined the same law firm Boeing had hired to defend against the high-profile case she prosecuted. Filing the case against Boeing in Fort Worth, Texas was surprising from the beginning, since Texas had no connection to any of this. According to the report, the case was settled with a deferred prosecution agreement. This was an agreement the Columbia law professor John Coffey at the time called one of the worst deferred prosecution agreements I have seen. The Crime Reporter published a response from Michael Stubmo and Nadia Millian, who lost their 24-year-old daughter in the Ethiopian airline crash. We were outraged that the Department of Justice prosecutors cut a sweetheart deal with Boeing, which let former Boeing CEO Dennis Muhlenberg and the Boeing executives and board members off the hook for their criminal negligence and fraud, which caused the death of Samaya while they enriched themselves. Stubmo and Milron said in a statement in response to the news, we were confused about why the Northern District of Texas was chosen by the Justice Department, given that none of the criminal behavior had anything to do with that district. Was it a compliant judge that Boeing favored? Was it compliant prosecutors that knew Boeing's criminal defense team? This is shocking new information. Paul Hudson of the consumer group Fires Rights told eTurboNews the case is an example of the revolving door where thousands of ex-government employees go to work for parties they regulated as government officers. But the revolving door is not supposed to be a conveyor belt. Hudson concluded, If a chief federal prosecutor joins a criminal defendant party or its defense firm shortly after representing the U.S. government in a related criminal matter, it raises both appearance concerns and ethical issues.
IATA, passengers confident in onboard safety, support mask wearing. Most air travelers are confident about the safety of air travel and support mask wearing in the near term. 85% of passengers believe aircraft are thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. 65% of passengers agree the air on an aircraft is as clean as an operating room. 89% of passengers believe protective measures are well implemented. The International Air Transport Association (IATA) reported that based on its latest passenger survey conducted in June, most air travelers are confident about the safety of air travel and support mask wearing in the near term. However, a majority are also frustrated with the hassle factor around COVID-19 protocols, including confusion and uncertainty about travel rules, testing requirements, and excessive test costs. The survey of 4,700 travelers in 11 markets around the world shows that 85% believe aircraft are thoroughly cleaned and disinfected. 65% agree the air on an aircraft is as clean as an operating room. Among those who have traveled since June 2020, 86% felt safe onboard owing to COVID-19 measures. 89% believe protective measures are well implemented. 90% believe airline personnel do a good job of enforcing the measures. Passengers strongly support mask wearing onboard 83% and strict enforcement of mask rules 86%, but a majority also believe the mask requirement should be ended as soon as possible. Air travelers recognize and value the safety measures put in place to minimize the risk of COVID-19 transmission during air travel. And they support the continuation of these measures as long as necessary, but they also don't want the measures to become permanent. In the meantime, we all need to respect the rules and the safety of fellow passengers. It is unacceptable that unruly passenger incidents have doubled compared to 2019, and the increase in physically abusive behavior is a particular cause for great concern, said Willie Walsh, IATA's Director General. At the same time, participants admit that they struggle with the COVID-related rules and requirements and that this impacts their willingness to travel. 70% thought the rules and the accompanying paperwork were a challenge to understand. 67% saw arranging testing as a hassle. 89% agreed governments must standardize vaccinations, testing certifications. These responses should be a wake-up call to governments that they need to do a better job of preparing for a restart. Almost two-thirds of respondents plan to resume travel within a few months of the pandemic being contained and borders opened. And by the 6-month mark almost 85% expect to be back to travel. To avoid overwhelming airports and border control authorities, governments need to agree to replace paper-based processes with digital solutions like the IATA Travel Pass for vaccine and testing documentation, said Walsh. Almost 9 out of 10 respondents like the idea of using a mobile app to store their travel health credentials, and 87% support a secure digital system to manage health credentials. However, 75% say they will only use an app if they have full control of their vaccine test data. IATA Travel Pass enables travelers to receive, store and share their health information with governments and airlines, but they always keep control of the information on their own mobile device. Now is the time for governments to facilitate digital solutions like IATA Travel Pass to avoid chaos at airports as travel begins to return, said Walsh.
Irreversible loss. Liverpool stripped of UNESCO World Heritage status. Liverpool loses its World Heritage status due to the irreversible loss of attributes conveying the outstanding universal value of the property. UNESCO has stripped Liverpool of its World Heritage status. Liverpool's waterfront had been damaged by redevelopment of the city's derelict waterfront areas. Liverpool was granted the coveted status in 2004 in recognition of its history as a trading hub during the British Empire, and for its architectural landmarks. At today's meeting of its World Heritage Committee, the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, concluded that Liverpool's waterfront had been damaged by a £5.5 billion, $7.48 billion, redevelopment of the city's derelict waterfront areas and the building of a $680 million stadium on the site of the old Bramley Moor dock. Therefore, UNESCO has stripped Liverpool of its World Heritage status due to the irreversible loss of attributes conveying the outstanding universal value of the property, caused by the redevelopment of the city's docklands and the construction of a waterfront football stadium. UNESCO announced its decision to delist Liverpool in a statement posted to its website. Liverpool called the decision to remove its status as incomprehensible, arguing that the World Heritage Site has never been in better condition due to the hundreds of millions invested throughout the city. Despite Liverpool's protestations, UNESCO says it had warned Liverpool in 2012 that its status was at risk of removal if it proceeded with planned waterfront developments. However, the city chose to go ahead with its building projects regardless of the risk to its World Heritage Site title. Liverpool was granted the coveted status in 2004 in recognition of its history as a trading hub during the British Empire and for its architectural landmarks. When awarding the city its title, UNESCO specifically referenced the docklands, which had played a significant role throughout the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries. The decision to delist Liverpool makes it the third city to lose its status, alongside the Elbe Valley in Dresden, following the construction of a 4-lane bridge across the landscape, and the Arabian Oryx Sanctuary in Oman, after it reduced the size of its protected area by 90%.
Domestic tourism continues to rebound, while international travel largely on hold. Between January and May, international tourist arrivals were 85% below 2019 levels. World destinations recorded 147 million fewer international arrivals compared to the same period of 2020. Slight upward trend emerged as some destinations started to ease restrictions and consumer confidence rose slightly. International tourism is slowly picking up, though recovery remains very fragile and uneven. The biggest crisis in the history of tourism continues into a second year. Between January and May, international tourist arrivals were 85% below 2019 LEVELS, or a 65% drop on 2020, most recent data shows. Despite a small uptick in May, the emergence of COVID-19 variants and the continued imposition of restrictions are weighing on the recovery of international travel. Meanwhile, domestic tourism continues to rebound in many parts of the world. The latest data shows that over the first 5 months of the year, world destinations recorded 147 million fewer international ARRIVALS overnight visitors, compared to the same period of 2020, or 460 million less than pre-pandemic year of 2019. However, the data does point to a relatively small upturn in May, with arrivals declining by 82% versus May 2019, after falling by 86% in April. This slight upward trend emerged as some destinations started to ease restrictions and consumer confidence rose slightly. By regions, Asia and the Pacific continued to suffer the largest decline with a 95% drop in international arrivals in the first 5 months of 2021 compared to the same period in 2019. EUROPE, minus 85%, recorded the second largest decline in arrivals, followed by the Middle EAST, minus 83%, and AFRICA, minus 81%. The AMERICAS, minus 72%, saw a comparatively smaller decrease. In June, the number of destinations with complete closure of borders decreased to 63, from 69 in February. Of these, 33 were in Asia and the Pacific, while just 7 in Europe, the region with the fewest restrictions on travel currently in place. By subregions, the CARIBBEAN, minus 60%, recorded the best relative performance through May 2021. Growing travel from the United States has benefited destinations in the Caribbean and Central America, as well as Mexico, Western Europe, Southern and Mediterranean Europe, South America and Central America saw slightly better results in May than in April. International tourism is slowly picking up, though recovery remains very fragile and uneven. Rising concerns over the Delta variant of the virus have led several countries to reimpose restrictive measures. In addition, the volatility and lack of clear information on entry requirements could continue to weigh on the resumption of international travel during the Northern Hemisphere's summer season. However, vaccination programs around the world, together with softer restrictions for vaccinated travelers and the use of digital tools such as the EU Digital COVID Certificate, are all contributing to the gradual normalization of travel. In addition, domestic travel is driving the recovery in many destinations, especially those with large domestic markets. Domestic air seat capacity in China and Russia has already exceeded pre-crisis levels, while domestic travel in the United States is strengthening further.
"12 train passengers killed, 5 injured in flooded subway tunnel in China. Subway administration urgently halted train traffic and cut all power, but one train stopped at a flooded section of the tunnel. Subway tunnel was flooded in the city of Zhengzhou, China. Subway workers evacuated 500 from flooded train. 12 people could not be rescued and died in the flood. According to a statement posted on Chinese social network Weibo by Henan regional authorities, at least 12 people died and 5 were injured when a subway tunnel was flooded in the city of Zhengzhou, the administrative center of East Central China's Henan province. Heavy rains in Henan caused water to amass in large amounts at a parking lot above a section of Zhengzhou Subway's Line 5. Eventually, the flood water found its way into the tunnel. Subway administration urgently halted train traffic and cut all power, but one train stopped at a flooded section of the tunnel. Subway workers organized evacuation, helping about 500 passengers to escape from flooded train. 12 people could not be rescued, they died. 5 people were injured and hospitalized, the city authorities said. In the past 24 hours, between 2 and 3.5 inches of rainfall was recorded in central and western districts of Henan. In the region's administrative center, Zhengzhou, the figure ranged between 10 and 13 inches. According to weather forecasts, about 10.25 inches of rainfall are expected in the region today.
First ever seaplane service between Boston Harbor and Manhattan announced. Boston Harbor to Manhattan's East River service by seaplane reduces total travel times 40% to 60%. New scheduled service creates the fastest way between Manhattan and Boston. Flights are approximately 75 minutes and start August 3, 2021. Non-stop, weekday flights at peak hours to and from Manhattan and Boston Harbor present exclusive time savings over all other modes of transportation. A seaplane operator Tailwind Air announced groundbreaking scheduled service, creating the fastest way between Manhattan and Boston. Travelers may now enjoy a non-stop seaplane flight directly from Manhattan's New York Skyport (NYS) on East 23rd Street to Boston Harbor (BNH), where a dedicated 7-minute water taxi will transfer clients to the South Boston waterfront. Flights are approximately 75 minutes and start August 3, 2021. By offering non-stop, weekday flights at peak hours to and from Manhattan and Boston Harbor, we present exclusive time savings over all other modes of transportation, at a reasonable price premium. CEO and founder of Tailwind Air, Alan Ram, explains, "Our Tailwind service combines the accessibility of the train with the speed of a flight. Seaplanes and waterway access fuel our exclusive service, a game changer for travelers between these cities," added Peter Manis, director of scheduled operations. "No one else is doing this." Bypassing the congestion of Boston Logan International is the first to fly directly into Boston Harbor. Tailwind Air is a pioneer in regional urban mobility, while using long-proven technology. New service erases the hassle and expense of commuting to an airport and lengthy check-in, security, and boarding processes. By cutting travel times 40% to 60%, Tailwind Air's service reduces aggravation and opens up half-day business trips. Due to the 8-passenger capacity of the seaplanes, and small, efficient facilities, guests can arrive for check-in as little as 10 minutes before departure. While Tailwind Air's seaplane fleet is young, less than 5 years on average, seaplane travel certainly is not. The Manhattan Skyport opened in 1936, hosting popular seaplane travel for decades. For nearly 100 years, seaplane operations have been part of the core transportation landscape of maritime cities such as Seattle, Miami, and Vancouver. By reconnecting Boston and New York City via seaplane, we more closely unite two urban cores. As North America's largest passenger operator of Cessna Caravans, Southern Airways has been pleased to partner for the past 2 years with one of the leading caravan seaplane operators, Tailwind Air, said Stan Little, chairman and CEO of Southern Airways. Connecting Boston and New York harbors by air is indeed a game changer, and we are proud to be the exclusive airline codeshare partner on this venture. Tailwind Air's fleet of Cessna Grand Caravan X amphibians is piloted by experienced and highly qualified captains. Tailwind Air currently flies to and from Manhattan, Montauk, East Hampton, and Shelter Island on a regular schedule. Last week, Tailwind announced weekday commuter flights to Bridgeport, Connecticut. The daily weekday route from Boston Harbor, BNH, to Manhattan, NYS, running through November includes, depart, 7 a.m. arrives, 8:25 a.m. F August 21, 2021, 10:05 a.m. 11:30 a.m. 2:10 p.m. 3:35 p.m. F August 21, 2021, 5:20 p.m. 6:45 p.m. Daily Manhattan, NYS, to Boston Harbor, BNH, depart, 8 a.m. arrive, 9:25 a.m. 9:30 a.m. 10:55 a.m. F August 21, 2021, 2:30 p.m. 3:55 p.m. 4:45 p.m. 6:05 p.m. F August 21, 2021. Tailwind Air plans to add additional route offerings in 2022, as well as to advance electric seaplane technology and explore innovations in urban air mobility. Uganda tour guides give back despite COVID-19 setbacks. Tour Guides Forum Uganda (TGFU), as part of their community outreach last week, participated in a charity drive for vulnerable communities. TFGU is a registered association of tour guides and tourist drivers in Uganda. Even while its members are bearing the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic since the country was first locked down in March 2020, charity was the priority. The organization donated wheelchairs, clothes, reusable sanitary pads, and soap to vulnerable groups in the Ngora village of Sorota located in eastern Uganda. The second lockdown that took place in early June saw the tourism sector exempted from the lockdown, with licensed tour operators allowed to operate unhindered after clearance by the Transport Licensing Board of the Ministry of Works and Transport, limited to foreign tourists. Although this was a reprieve for tour operators and guides alike, several companies were swamped with cancellations and sought to reschedule or resell guerrilla permits altogether, dashing hopes of restarting the sector. Some lodges, names withheld, were uncompromising on their cancellation policies, urging tour operators to rely on travel insurance to make their claims for refunds, much to the frustration of tour operators. In spite of the setbacks, said Chairman of Tourism Guides Forum Uganda, James Moore, we have guides who had invested in other areas before the pandemic came up and were able to contribute some small funds for these community projects. Yes, most tour guides have not been working for about 2 years now, but this pandemic gives us something to learn, to always be innovative with our income. Much thanks to our members for the great heart of help and love. To my team I traveled with, you are amazing: Joseph Muteby, Luboa Moses, Luchi Williams, Zed Babali, Carol Amutuherwe, Nangai Paul, Tamale Joseph, Cesar Edram, and Benajadu. May God bless you abundantly. Many on the team belong to the founding members of the said association and had invested in farming, poultry, and real estate. Moore, who sells chicken products, said that the association is looking at getting partners on board. In Uganda, from January 3, 2020, to today, July 21, 2021, there have been 90,910 confirmed cases of COVID-19 with 2,412 deaths, as reported by the World Health Organization, WHO. As of July 19, 2021, a total of 1,058,084 vaccine doses have been administered throughout the country.
Albania Travel and Tourism, COVID Impact Report. The state of the travel and tourism industry contributed 49.1% less to the GDP of Albania between 2019 and 2020 due to COVID-19. Albania lost 1 in 11 jobs since the outbreak of COVID-19. In 2019, 334 million jobs in the country contributed to Albania's travel and tourism industry. The GDP contribution for the tourism sector in Albania went from 20.5% to 10.6% from 2019 to 2020. International visitor impact on spending went from $271.0 billion to $125 billion, a 53.9% loss from 2019 to 2020. Domestic visitor impact on spending went from $80.4 billion to $41.5 billion or 48.3%. The numbers comparing domestic or international spending was 23% to 77% in 2019 and 25% to 75% in 2020. The leisure travel market went up to reflect 2% more leisure travelers spend in Albania. The top 5 inbound arrivals to Albania in 2020 were North Macedonia, 16%, Greece, 8%, Italy, 7%, Montenegro, 7%, Poland, 3%. The top 5 outbound markets where Albanians like to travel to are Greece, Italy, Turkey, Montenegro, Bulgaria. This data, based on the WTTC Economic Trends Report, reveals COVID-19's dramatic impact on travel and tourism around the world. Prior to the pandemic, travel and tourism, including its direct, indirect and induced impacts, accounted for 1 in 4 of all new jobs created across the world, 10.6% of all jobs, 334 million, and 10.4% of global GDP, $9.2 trillion. International visitor spending amounted to $1.7 trillion in 2019, 6.8% of total exports, 27.4% of global services exports. The research also shows that the travel and tourism sector suffered a loss of almost $4.5 trillion to reach $4.7 trillion in 2020, with the contribution to GDP dropping by a staggering 49.1% compared to 2019, relative to a 3.7% GDP decline of the global economy in 2020. In 2019, the travel and tourism sector contributed 10.4% to global GDP, a share which decreased to 5.5% in 2020 due to ongoing restrictions to mobility. In 2020, 62 million jobs were lost, representing a drop of 18.5%, leaving just 272 million employed across the sector globally, compared to 334 million in 2019. The threat of job losses persists as many jobs are currently supported by government retention schemes and reduced hours, which without a full recovery of travel and tourism could be lost. Domestic visitor spending decreased by 45%, while international visitor spending declined by an unprecedented 69.4%.
have here the best popcorn. No, pero le quedan ido.
Yes, this is exactly what I